Alright, Rob's Arcade, where the games get played and the games get saved so they can be played on another day. Welcome back. What in the heck? Alright. Well, welcome back to Rob's Arcade. I'm your host, Mr. Rob French. That was very interesting. Um, Here as we're doing another of these comic book confessions, a total ripoff of the HBO show Taxi Cab Confessions, where people would just drive around and get videotaped and share their stories. And I kind of like that idea. So we're taking a little bit of that, we're stealing it, we're working with that a little bit here in Los Santos, driving around in the snow because we love the snow here in GTA. Just makes driving a little more interesting, makes it a little more festive this time of year, and just I've got a huge love of comics, video games. I love to share all that stuff with you guys when I can. And when watching some podcasts on comic book collecting and those who also share the same passion, it became pretty clear and pretty prevalent that I have some stories to share with you guys as well, to I don't know, shed a little light on my own comic book collecting experiences and what it's been like collecting comic books for the last 30 years or so. Been collecting comics since I was about 10 or 11. Going to be turning, uh, you know, 46 here pretty soon. So it's been a long time collecting comics. I love comic books. I still enjoy reading them on a daily basis. And anytime I can get my hands on new issues or classic issues, you can bet I am going to do it. I love picking up books at local stores, um, you know, thrift shops, flea markets, antique places, anything. Um,
Thank you.
Anything I can get my hands on. I love this stuff. So
I got a customer for you right now.
I've been sharing some stories with you guys. Some of it's been like the origin. Excuse me. I've been sharing like the origin of what it's been like getting into different comic companies, whether it's Marvel or DC, and all of that. But I think one of the most interesting tales is getting into collecting and visiting comic book shops, because that wasn't something that I always just did. It wasn't like, oh, I like comics and I just started going in comic book stores. My first experience with comics was the little red spinner rack of comics at the grocery store. That's typically where I would pick up my books, whether it was something from the Marvel universe, or some of those original books like Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror. That's basically where I would wind up getting my comics from. It wasn't until I believe a conversation with one of my cousins, my older cousin who's now sadly passed away, came over my house one day when I was younger, and I just started getting into collecting comics and saw my collection. I had a really interesting setup for my comic books. You know, now I have cardboard comic boxes that I keep them all in, and they're labeled, split up by company and alphabetically. Certain characters have their own boxes, and it's very very well organized today. But when I first started collecting, I didn't have a setup quite like that, and in fact, the way I stored my comics was I kept them in a very old, almost like a World War II medicine cabinet, like some kind of an old military medicine cabinet with glass sides and a glass magnetic door on the front.
You! Fuck me! Jesus!
Wow. 'Tis the season. Gotta get that Christmas shopping done. Um, so, the little medicine cabinet, it was deep enough where, it was like you could keep two stacks of comics basically. It was wide enough and deep enough that you could stack two stacks of comics side by side in this thing. I think at one point it had some glass shelves in it that might have broke out. Because I think when I had it, I don't think it had any glass shelves. Maybe one glass shelf at the very, very top. They were adjustable, of course, and it was something that, like, you'd be able to keep like medicines and gauze and that sort of thing. It was like a medicine cabinet you would find in like a doctor's office for like first aid. Like I said, very World War II style looking, like very very antique. And my cousin saw these comics sitting in it, and he noticed like they weren't bagged or boarded or anything. They were just loose comics stacked in two stacks inside, and it was nice. It kept the dust off of the books for sure. Kept them dry, kept them clean, but it wasn't very well organized. Like, you would have to kind of take the stacks out of the medicine cabinet and sort of, flip through them loose without the bags and the boards to protect them. And it was easy for them to get kind of shuffled around side by side in the medicine cabinet, and they could get dog-eared very easily. He mentioned this bag and board process, and I wasn't even really sure what he was even talking about. He was trying to describe them to me, and I was thinking kind of like giant Ziploc bags for your comics, and he was like, well, kind of like that, but they're more like, he was like this sandwich bags where you can kind of like fold. I just wanted to see how close I was to that car. How he's like, you kind of like fold the flap over and all of that, and I was kind of like, okay. So I was like kind of picturing like these sandwich bags, but then larger, almost like the size of maybe like a small garbage bag, and
Why are we stopping?
just like trying to like really understand like what this looked like. And the only place you could really find these things were at comic shops. Most stores in our neighborhood didn't sell comic book bags and boards. Although I do remember at one point, I think there was like a Rite Aid in our neighborhood that actually did sell like some pretty cheap bags and boards. They were like the self-adhesive, self-sealing kind. Very thin plastic, like the seam on the sides would tear fairly easily.
Why are we stopping?
But I do remember that was pretty convenient and an easy fix if we did run out of, our bags and our boards. But I think that was the conversation, like that was the catalyst, that conversation for my cousin of this idea of like bags and boards that then led me to be like, well, where do you even find something like that? and it was this idea of like, wait, there's something called like there's like a comic book shops, and that's like,
Thanks.
and that's all they sell. It's just comic books and comic book stuff, and so that idea
Call your teammate.
became
It's up on your GPS now.
extremely fascinating to me. You know, the idea that there was an entire shop, an entire store set up not only to comics, but then the supplies and the cards and T-shirts and posters and all of these various things. And so that led me to one begging my dad to take me to comic shops, but then discovering and finding all the local comic shops within the Richmond area. Some of them I still frequent to this day. Stories Comics has been around since before I started collecting and was one of the very first stores that I visit, and still one of my favorite shops to this day, as well as Richmond Comics. Richmond Comics has changed locations a few times. I feel like it's always been on like the same main road, but it's changed locations on that road quite a few times. But that's one I've been going to since I was about 12 years old. Um, and there's been a few others. Dude, I'm not moving. So there's been like a few shops that I've been going to since I was a kid. There's been a few new ones that have popped up from time to time. And I was even like lucky enough that my dad would visit a few by his work and actually had boxes set up for me there to where I could basically tell him like these are the books I want, these are the books I'm really interested in, and they would actually start holding on to these titles for me so my dad could just pick them up when he was available to, and that's basically how I would get a hold of a lot of my books. I would just tell my dad like, hey, you know, um, this book, that book, which is really interesting. Like I didn't realize this. I mean, like having a box at a comic shop is pretty OP. And like I was 10, 12 years old, something like that, with my own box at like these comic shops down in the city, in the college, that whole like college area. These cool college kids would visit these comic shops, and here I am like 10 years old with a box here at these comic shops. But Image Comics, which I haven't really jumped into how I even really discovered Image Comics, and I'll share that story for sure. But Image Comics was probably what kept me wanting to go back. Like I feel like that initial conversation again with my cousin about what is bagging and boarding of the comics, and what does that look like, and what is that, where do you find those, and what does that mean, you know, all of that, what does that even mean? Man, that brick wall popped out of nowhere, man. But then I feel like it was certain books and certain characters, definitely Image Comics, definitely Spawn, that kept me going back to. That's not how you still carry it. It kept me going back to the comic shop, week after week, month after month. In fact, I can share before I take the time to jump into my origin and how I discovered Image Comics. I will say that Spawn was one of those that had me calling comic book shops, and that was something I had never really done before either. You know, it was like, my comic book collecting was basically going to the grocery store with my dad. He would reward me by buying me a comic for, tagging along and hanging out with him on a Saturday morning when I'd much rather be at home watching cartoons or just sleeping in. And it wasn't one of those things like, I'm like, oh, I gotta get this book, or I gotta get this issue, or I gotta get that. When Spawn hit the shelves and when Image Comics, I mean, that was something where it's like, I've got to get this. Like, I've got to know when this next issue comes out. And so that really caused me to then call comic book shops. And this is back in the day. This is back in the era of the yellow pages and the white pages and all of that. So if you wanted to call a comic shop, you would essentially have to pull out the yellow pages, look up, I don't even know what you would look up under. I don't know if it was under comics or like a bookstore. I think it was under comics, and it was like really hard to it was like really hard to find. For some reason I feel like it was between, I feel like it was between two pretty common.
I got a pickup not too far from you. Sending you the address now.
I kind of feel I was like stuck between like two pretty common job practices, and it's like trying to find. No, I don't think it was under comic shop. I don't think it was like you just looked under there under comic shop. I think it was under something weird, like. Maybe collectibles. Whatever it wasn't easy. And so you have to get out the yellow pages, look it up, find the little small section. There's about, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 comic shops. And you just call them up and, hey, has this come out? Is this available? But I didn't understand how comic deliveries and comic releases and all of that work. Now I get it. There's a specific day where new comic books are available, and they have release dates, and even little insiders. Back then, there was little insiders you could pick up, and it would tell you, hey, this book is going to drop on this date, and be on the lookout, and blah, 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 blah. And, you knew that if, Spawn came out towards the end of the month in April, it wasn't going to be out that very first week of May. Most likely it was going to be out again towards the end of April, and then maybe not right out that very first week of June, but again, probably closer. So they all kind of like release in that same week. Like if a book released like the first week of a month, then typically the next issue would release the first week or so of the following month. I didn't understand how any of that worked. So here I am at like 12 years old, calling comic book shops every day. Like not even just like once a week or something like that, but almost like every day, like Monday, hello. Yeah, hello, so-and-so comics. Yeah, has the new Spawn came out yet? And they're like, no, not yet. Okay. Like the new book had just come out probably like a week before, You got a few weeks, kid, before the next issue comes out. So then like Tuesday comes around. Hi. Yeah, hello, so-and-so comics. I was just wondering, has the new Spawn come out yet? And they're like, no. New comics don't come out on Mondays or Tuesdays. New comic books come out on Wednesdays, buddy. and it's not going to be tomorrow, so you better not call. Then the next day comes around, and I'm just like, I wonder if the new book's come out yet. And I remember I called one comic shop, I can't remember how many times, but it must have been at least like 3 or 4 times. And by the end of the week, the dude was just like, hey kid, with the new issue of whatever comes out, you'll know about, like all of a sudden he had a New York accent or something, you know? Like all of a sudden he's like from Jersey. Hey kid, when the new comic book comes out, you'll hear all about it. Until then, leave me alone. Quit bothering me, kid. I was terrified. Like my dad would be like, do you want to go to the comic shop this week? And I'd be like, oh no. I think I upset one of the guys that worked. There's no way, yeah. No way, Dad. There was one comic shop. I liked going to every comic shop as a kid. Richmond Comics, Nostalgia Plus, Stories. They were all a lot of fun. In fact, I was lucky enough to have a comic shop opened up across the street from me when I was growing up, and that was just absolutely amazing. That was a game changer in terms of my my comic book collecting existence. Having a shop open up right across the street was absolutely amazing.
Right now.
But there was one shop that I absolutely hated going to, and that was Dave's Comics. That shop is actually advertised in some of the comics I have from the 90s. It was a pretty prevalent shop here in Richmond, probably the most well-known comic book shop here in Richmond. But ironically, it was the one shop I despised going to. I just did not enjoy going there. I didn't enjoy my time there. It was just one of those places where you couldn't shop around and have a good time and have a casual experience. It was almost as soon as you walk in the door, it was, hey, what are you looking for? And let me help you find it. And there was no exploration. That's part of going to a comic shop. I mean, yeah, sometimes you go to a comic shop. Yeah, I'm looking for this issue, and this issue. Point me in the right direction. Or do you even have them? A lot of it, though, is just showing up and picking through boxes, or scanning the shelves to see what's out or what you might have missed last week. And you don't always need like a gosh, what are they called? Some kind of a shopper. I can't think of what it's called. Something shopper. I can't think. But you just want to be able to walk around and check things out, and you don't need somebody over your shoulder the whole time. Like, is this what you're looking for? Or it just takes all the fun out of it. And I literally remember going there maybe 2 or 3 times, and every time I went there, it just wasn't a great experience. I think I went there maybe twice as a kid when I was about 12 or so, and just really didn't enjoy it. And then went later on as an adult. I think I lived pretty close to the store at the time, and was looking to buy some t-shirts for Christmas, actually, of all things. And I thought, oh, I'll get my dad a Punisher t-shirt. I thought that would be really cool. And I'll get my sister a Wonder Woman t-shirt. And, Walmart and Target have cool superhero shirts from time to time, but if you really want to get a cool comic shirt, comic book stores have some really cool choices and things you're not going to find, at your everyday store. So I went there to just like pick up a couple of shirts, and I remember thinking like, God, this was a mistake. Like even coming somewhere like this just to pick up a couple of shirts was just like, I don't know. Not enjoyable. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and start to wrap up this video. You know, I would love to hear from you guys if you've ever been to any comic shops yourself. If not, let's make a trip out of it. Let's plan a day trip, you guys. We can set a date, set a time, set a location, and all meet up and grab some really cool comics. I love the comic shop. Still one of my favorite places to visit. And you know, if you've never been, do yourself a favor and go check out one of your local comic stores. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed me ramble about my experience at the comic shops. I can't wait to kick back and tell you about the comic shop. Like I said, that opened up right across the street from my house. You know, it's one of the things I think about all the time. Like, why am I into comics? You know, I'm in my 40s. I'm still reading comics. Why hasn't that ever stopped? But when I look back at some of the things that have happened and some of my experiences, it's a kind of a no-brainer that I do read comics. So it's a lot of fun to share some of those experiences and some of those stories with you guys. I hope you've enjoyed this installment of the comic book Confessions. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Please leave a comment down below. And until next time, please take care of yourself, take care of each other, and don't spend that quarter anywhere else.
And thank you.
Call just came in. It's up on your GPS now.